North Carolina is preseason number one and absolutely loaded with a returning cast. So how on earth is this year's freshman class going to contribute to the ultimate goal of a national championship?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or your first watch every single day. Please don't forget, we're free and available anywhere you get podcasts, so you can subscribe right now to make sure that you don't miss a second of your team every day. It's great to be joined today on Locked On Tar Heels by Sports Illustrated's Director of Basketball Recruiting, Mr. Jason Jordan. And it is hard to believe now that we are 6 days, less than a week away from the start of the college basketball season. And that means the class of 22 that we've been looking at and talking about and all this for so long is now no longer recruits. They're part of these teams. And so what Jason and I are going to do today is take a look back at Carolina's four-person freshman class, who they were on the recruiting trail. Three of these four were in Jason's SI 99 rankings. And so first we're going to start by just talking about who they were as Jason was starting to get to see them and their game as high school students. So as a reminder, let's look at them. We'll just take it in the order of Jason's SI 99. So you got Seth Trimble, who was 32, Jalen Washington, who was 35, Tyler Nickel, who was 90 on the lower end of that, and then Wilcher, who was not ranked in the SI 99 and a lot of the other rankings, but obviously he will be able to be a contributor. So Jason, let's take them in that order. Let's start with Seth Trimble out of Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin. What do you remember about him?
So I'm a big fan of Seth. I think we probably had him the highest ranked of different rankings just because he made a big impression on me.
Yeah,
Watching him all summer and all spring for the last couple of years, but super athlete, I would say that first. Super athlete, super athletic point guard, really adept at getting downhill and getting into the lane, and super strong with the ball. So he finishes through contact, but he's the guy who's going to make wow plays from the backcourt. Makes great decisions, great decisions, great reads, and then he can be a hound on the defensive end too. So he's a potential lockdown defender, a guy who I think he'll fill that role this year because he'll be able to, learn under the best backcourt in the country. But, a guy who could potentially be a lockdown defender at the point guard spot, but high IQ guy, runs the offense really well, gets the ball out in transition. I think you guys may have heard about that type of might be how you guys like to play. He's not a guy who holds the ball and not going to pat it forever. Makes winning plays. So I understand why, I don't think he just went there because his brother went there. I think the system fits him to a T, and I think he'll be like a fan favorite in the years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who saw Carolina's exhibition game last Friday, everything that Jason just said has already borne out to be true. And for those who aren't aware, just as Jason referenced, Seth's older brother, that's JP Tokoto, who was at Carolina, been around a decade ago now. That's hard to believe. That means we're all getting really old, Mr. Jordan.
Yeah.
So let's transition from Seth to the player 3 spots later in your rankings at number 35, Jalen Washington, who it seems like talent-wise, strictly based on that, probably would have been higher in just about every recruiting service, but due to some knee injuries, kind of lingered lower than he would be. What is there truth to that, Jason? What are your thoughts on Mr. Jalen Washington?
Oh yeah, healthy. I mean, with the logical progression, he would have been a McDonald's kid. I don't think anybody disputes that. I mean, at some point you have to. I mean, he didn't play in like a year and a half, ACL, and then I think I'm not even gonna do that, but I heard there were some issues right with the ACL, and he had to go back and make sure everything was okay. But I guess he's 100% now, ready to roll, and so that's a great thing for you guys because I'm as talented, and nobody's talking about him. That's the funny thing, I guess, because we don't have the sample size and, things like that. He wasn't, a high profile guy because he wasn't playing. But, at 6'10", He's a stretch for extraordinaire, right? So he knocks down shots, super athlete, super agile, but just plays with a high motor and great rebounder, great anticipation on defense on the defensive end, just playing passing lanes and deflections and as a rim protector as well. So he checks off a lot of boxes. I'm curious as to how they'll be able to implement him because you guys, I mean, it's a great problem to have, but y'all have a traveling all-star team. So, you know, but an amazing piece. I mean, people kind of compare him to maybe potentially filling the Marvin Williams role or something like that. Just the guy who gives the spark off the bench, but you'll be able to tell his potential like immediately, because he's really that good. But the only reason that he wasn't hired, to your point, was because he just wasn't playing, and other guys were producing, and we gotta give them their flowers.
That's right. That's right.
That's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because at that point, you can't go on projections. You got to go with what you're seeing on the court. And so Jalen will have to prove that. And we will unpack his role specifically on this year's team, along with these other guys here in just a little bit. Let's keep the train moving then. And quite a bit further down the rankings is Mr. Tyler Nickel, who is Virginia's all-time leading scorer. But many wonder, hey, he's playing at a little bit of a lower high school level. And so the offense is clearly there. What about his defense? What are the things that you saw from Tyler Nickel as a high school player?
Well, just great size. I mean, he played with Loaded North Carolina, one of the best teams on the Adidas circuit. And no, he played with Loaded Virginia. I'm sorry, North Carolina. He played with Loaded Virginia. There's many things. But the biggest thing about Tyler was, let's just get to the chase. He's a shot maker, right? Yes. So he's the guy who's going to stretch the defense. One of the best shot makers on the Adidas circuit for sure. But I think he's underrated at being able to get his shot off. A lot of people think he's a standstill shooter, but he was adept at creating space to get that shot off against very athletic wings and some of your favorite players in on those rankings. I saw him give some buckets to. So I mean, he's one game that really stands out, and this will probably really shock people, but he played against was it Durant, Derek Lively, and Jalen Duren at what was it? It was a tournament in Virginia during the spring, and he really got off in that game, and he really showed his capabilities as a guy who's able to create his own shot. So, I know people gave him flack for playing at a small high school, but at the end of the day, he put up some numbers. So, like I always say, you understand what I mean when I say this, but 20 a game isn't 20 a game, but 30 a game is 30 a game. I don't.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, but at the end of the day, he's going to see the court as he's able to knock down shots, and obviously he's going to have to defend. He's not getting on the court without that. And so I think that that probably, and we'll talk about that more, but that'll be his biggest curve. But he's a big time shot maker for sure.
Okay, interesting. So Jason believes that shot-making capability is going to transition to all levels, and we've already seen some of that in the preseason and scrimmages and things of that nature. And then the final member of this class, Jason, and as we said, was not ranked in many of the recruiting services, but is Wilcher coming out of Alabama, a huge body, and is going to be more of a development. But what are some of the things that stood out with him as a high school player?
Yeah, like you said, big body, space eater. He's able to finish plays, great hands, soft touch around the rim. It's good that he's going to be able to develop. I don't think he's ready to be not at that level where he can just be thrown into the fire. I think he get lost respectfully. But I think, guarding Armando Bacot in practice every day, I think that will pay huge dividends down the road. I mean, he's a 4-year guy, and there's no way around it. But I think he's a guy who could provide some. Like, he's a really good rebounder. He works really hard, plays with a high motor, and on that team, because of the, people forget and not forget, but people you have to remember because of all that talent. Like, he's a guy who can definitely finish plays. He has great hands. So I think he could provide potentially some really good minutes if called upon. Now, at the end of the day, Mondo played 31, 32 minutes a game last year. I mean, Hubert's going to play his guys. He's going
That's
to
right.
play his guys. So, I wouldn't expect him to, be a 15-minute guy, but we'll talk about that. But to stay on that capable backup, who I think, with a logical progression could see some more positive minutes as the years go on.
Yes, absolutely. And so, to some of what Jason's talking about, what we want to look at is with North Carolina's loaded returning court, just exactly how will these four incoming freshmen carve out a role or a niche on this team? And how do the things that Jason saw on the recruiting trail translate to how they will fit Hubert Davis's? And we'll talk about that right after I tell you about Nissan. This week's thrilling moment in college football is brought to you by Nissan. The thrilling designs behind the new lineup from Nissan are intended to empower drivers in vehicles as capable as the drivers themselves. When I think of unbelievable abilities on the field for this week's thrilling moment, it has to be Drake May and the Heisman progression that he has been on. Man, in this game against Pitt this weekend, it started with Antoine Green's one-handed ball to the shoulder pads touchdown catch, and it finished with Drake May having a career-high 388 passing yards. He had 5 passing TDs, the third one of those this season. It's his 5th game with 5 total TDs, a feat only accomplished by 2 other ACC quarterbacks in the past 25 years, some guy named Lamar Jackson and some other guy named Taj Boyd. You might have heard of them. He leads the nation in total TDs, total offense per game. He's tied with Ohio State's CJ Stroud in passing touchdowns. This Drake May train keeps on rolling, folks, and that is our thrilling Nissan moment of this week. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. It's all available now at nissanusa.com. Okay, so Jason, I want to get back to talking about these guys, but before we do, let me remind you that these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, Jason, as we reference, and you started to touch on this some, man, this Carolina team, I think you said it is like a walking all-star circus. And so you've got these who project to be high-level college players, and they're coming in. What exactly can their role be on this team? You said, let's start with Seth Trimble. I know you said perhaps the best backcourt in America in Caleb Love and RJ Davis. How can Seth Trimble carve out a role along with those guys?
It'll be tough because, let's look at I think Caleb played 34, RJ played 33 minutes. Again, Hubert's going to play them starters. That's what we do know, But, to be fair, he kind of had to last year, right? You got to just give it, hit you with your best shot. But now he has a capable backup in Seth Trimble, more than capable. Let's be clear. Seth Trimble's a starter.
Yes.
That's a fact. He's a starter who is going to be able to reap the benefits of learning under the best backcourt. I believe is the best backcourt in the country. So that will serve him well in the years to come. And yeah, I know people don't want to talk about this. They are the best backcourt, but they can be sometimes they have been a little up and down,
Particularly Caleb.
Feast or famine, Caleb. Sometimes, that he can be feast or famine, So, I think Seth is a guy who can step in and provide, I would say I don't want to say a spark because that seems like, but I think he could probably provide a little bit of an upgrade of a spark. Like he can run the offense. I think you guys have seen it. He's a cape, and then, Hubert puts a premium on defense. He's going to get after it on defense. And he can get downhill. I haven't seen people be able to stay in front of Seth Trimble. And he played in the EYBL. That's the best of the best, as everybody knows. So, I think he's an upgrade of a capable backup. But I do think he'll benefit from learning under the best backcourt in the country. But he'll get his minutes. I think he'll get. I think of the he and Jalen Washington will probably get, around the same minutes as backups. But I think that could potentially be your 7-man rotation right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's.
Seth
yeah,
is really
good.
I'm
Goodness
high
gracious.
on Seth. Seth is a bad man. I'm telling you.
Yes.
Seth is a bad man.
And because if Coach Davis, if he earns Coach Davis's trust and is able to provide legitimate backup, I mean, there's a difference in spot minutes and like legitimate backup minutes, if we can make that distinction. And if he's able to do that, I mean, do you foresee that making RJ and Caleb all the more efficient? Like, hey, you can come out, get a legitimate breather, and then when you're in, you can go full bore because you know that Seth Trimble is going to provide, if not the same level, little drop off when he's in.
So let me be 100% clear. He will get. I'm telling you, they okay, and I get it, but they probably have the NBA range thing over him right now, but he's definitely going to push them, and they're going to push him, and I do. This is why I think they're the number one team in the country, because of guys like Seth, who are going to do exactly what you said. They're going to push each other, and it's going to raise everybody's level. And I think you've seen that in the scrimmages. You can't tell a lot about scrimmages, but you'll see that early on in the year. Because he's really that good. He's really that good.
Yeah, that's great. Now, you referenced Jalen Washington, and earlier when you talked about him, you made a little bit of a Marvin Williams comparison, and I love that thought because, man, this high-level recruit coming in for the 2004-2005 national championship team never started a single game and was the third pick in the 2005 NBA draft. And so Jalen, now obviously a little bit different with Jalen Washington coming off these injuries, just recently been cleared. So I guess it's a twofold question, Jason. How long does it take to get into legitimate game shape coming back from that? And then secondarily, how can he provide, similar to Seth Trimble, legit backup minutes for the backcourt? How can he provide that same type of breather in the front court for Armando Bacot and Pete Nance?
Yeah, well, usually coming off that ACL, it takes at least about, I'd say 2 to 3 months to get in real, game. I mean, you can be out there playing, but, you got to overcome mental hurdles and obviously physical things are probably still in rehab. But the mental hurdle, I've always been told, is the biggest hurdle. But, with Nance kind of throws a wrench into it because they kind of fill the same role, and
exactly.
Nance is gonna play. He's gonna play a lot. He's a bad man. Y'all got a lot of bad men. Y'all got a lot of bad men. Y'all got a lot of bad men. But Jalen, similar to Seth, like we said, he's definitely gonna be a guy who provides that spark. But people will see. NBA guys know about Jalen. Obviously, everybody wants to see how he's looking, in game situations, but it's trickling out that he's looking pretty good. Because at the end of the day, the game is all about knocking out shots.
That's right.
We can peel back all the little cool layers and all the cool things, and you knock down some shots. And at 6'10", he's knocking down shots efficiently, and that's probably the best part of his offensive game. Great motor. A great defender. We talked about that. Great anticipation and all that stuff. But on the offensive end, with his ability to knock down shots and stretch the defense, he's going to definitely see time, and he's just going to make them that much more lethal.
Man, it's just a matter of time. Got to get Jalen Washington fully healthy. The nice thing is this depth affords you, the depth in the upperclassmen returning affords you that capability. And so you love how the coaching staff and the medical staff will be able to slowly work him in.
Yeah.
And then I want to ask about Tyler Nickel as well and how he'll fit on this team, because it's interesting. While it's maybe a more high level front court and back court, this wing position is loaded for Carolina. Obviously, Leaky Black, arguably the best defender in the ACC, maybe the nation, will start at the 3. But then you've got Puff Johnson coming in behind him, Dontrez Styles, and there's kind of that floating between 2 to 4, where it's if you're playing small ball or big or whatever. But ultimately, Tyler Nickel really is either a huge shooting guard or a 3. And if you're going small, maybe up to a 4, but obviously he can knock down shots. But how how can he find a way in to this lineup to provide maybe some microwave minutes scoring?
Well, I'm going to say, so at that level, it's all about who you can defend. You have to ask that question first. So if you're not going to be able to defend the wing, and respectfully, I don't think Tyler Nickel is going to be able to defend the wings at this level. Not today, right? Not today.
Not today. No.
So I'm going to have to put him into a stretch 4. Shout out to my man Dane Irvin. We had this conversation.
Okay.
He'll laugh if he ever reads it. But he's definitely a stretch 4. I think Tyler's definitely a stretch, which has got to make it even harder. Because, I mean, we just talked about the 2 guys that are occupying those waters. So I don't think that we're going to get a lot from Tyler in year 1.
In year 1, yep.
Year 1. But I definitely think he's a capable guy who can come in and, grow into a guy who is a starter there in Chapel Hill. I really believe that because he's too good a shooter. And again, name of the game, he has that going for him. But I think as he, as he develops on the defensive end, as he develops just with physical things with agility and, athleticism and quickness and things like that, I think he'll be a stronger player. And the reality is it's set up for him to our point, to be able to develop. That's the great thing about this class. And that's what's going to really propel you guys. And that's what people should be. Yeah. Like people don't understand. They're like, wait, what about Seth? We heard Seth was this. Why is he not doing? Well, you okay. Well, then give me Caleb and RJ and I'll give you Seth. I'm going to take them off your team. It's like, come on, but you have to look at long-term. You have to look at big picture, and long-term and big picture. Tyler Nichols is a guy who I definitely think will be a big-time production guy for you guys.
I love that point you just made, Jason. And that's exactly where I want to go next is to look at how can a big time program like Carolina sell big time recruits on, hey, come be part of a class that helps us build longevity within our program. I want to look at the answer to that question right after I tell you about SweatBlock. It's the day after Halloween today, and I had an experience this weekend where I could have massively benefited from SweatBlock. I was at a trunk or treat this weekend at my church, and it got moved indoors because of rain. And let me tell you, there were too many people in a confined space. I was wearing way too many layers, and I sweated out 5 pounds off my body. It was a miserable experience. I could have been able to fix my problem if I had only had the help of SweatBlock. SweatBlock's wipes are a must-have for everyone's personal bags and belongings. Whether it's a big presentation or a hot date, everyone can benefit from having the SweatBlock wipes on hand. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try SweatBlock. You can save 20% with promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. It's also available on Amazon. Man, Jason, there we go. We're in the middle of recording podcasts. I could use some of that myself right now. Check out that SweatBlock, folks. You love it. But very seriously, Jason, I mean, these guys, you talked about Seth Trimble, starter, Jalen Washington, when he's healthy, high-level starter, could probably be other programs starting day one right now. But so if you're Hubert Davis, if you're Sean May or other members of this coaching staff, Brad Frederick, whomever it may be, how do you sell a top 40 player, top 50 player, hey, come here and wait your turn? How do you make that pitch?
So you can make that pitch toward the latter tier of that range, right?
Gotcha.
So I'll bring it home for you. Simeon, your guy in 23. You're not selling, and Simeon's a humble kid. I mean, one of the nicest kids, so respectable, great family. But you're not gonna sell him on hey man, come wait your turn, because it's not gonna happen. Like you're not doing that with a top 15 level, right? Be clear. Really, top 25, you probably could, but mentally, top 25, they're not hearing that. So, but I'll say this: if ever there were a year to say, "Hey, come wait your turn," and come here and play with this traveling all-star team, I mean, look who we have. Like, do you really expect me to sit Caleb up, like the guy who hit that shot over Mark Williams? The one that had 30 and gave Duke buckets. He's gonna sit. You're not splitting minutes with him. You're gonna have to sit behind him. You really want to. Mondo, he has a Mondo burger. I mean, are you sitting? You're not playing over Armando Bacot. You're not doing that. But you could learn. You could come in here and give us that spark. You can come in here and, now there are some guys, Marvin Williams, that's a great example. That's the example. I'm going to take you back even further. Remember Corey Maggette?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Duke's the Duke team that lost one game and then lost in got outcoached. Sorry, got outcoached in the national championship by UConn. But Corey Maggette was a lottery pick, but he came and he was the sixth man, and he played behind Nate James, who was a role player. So I think if anybody could sell it, it would have to be a team like they have a team like you guys have now. Because I know I'm being old and referencing things from 20 years
No, it's great.
They have a team like you guys have now where you're expected to win the title, right? People are like championship or bust, and y'all are okay with that because you got the team to do it. But it's going to have to be that team, and I mean that team. I'm not talking about number 3. I'm talking about the team that is supposed to win, and that's the only year you're going to be able to sell that to like a top-tier kid. But, 20 to 50, you could sell that. That's an easier sell. But again, it's got to be this team. Got to be specifically this team.
Yeah. Now, and that brings up a great question as you think about those tiers, like in that 30 to 50, is that the recruiting philosophy of some coaches and like, for example, I know Duke, Kentucky, etc., going high after that highest tier every opportunity they possibly can. Is it the recruiting philosophy of some programs to say, hey, we're going after these top 30 kind of guys that can be program guys that are going to be around for multi-years? Like, is that a way that some are approaching it?
Yeah. I mean, some like the Dukes and the Kentuckys, they expect you're in freshman, do your thing, get up out of here. And some guys aren't like that. Most. I mean, they're probably the only 2 that are like that. But the turnover every year is expected, and so because of that, they go for the top 10s. Top 10 kids, top 15 kids, and that is that philosophy there. But but you have to, in that bunch, you have to have role players, and now you have to have transfer portal guys. You got to save some spots. That's just the world we live in. But yeah, certainly that's the philosophy for most schools to go in that 50 range and kind of sell in the way that you're talking about.
Yeah. Oof, what a mess this whole recruiting game is. So, Jason, let me ask you, as you look at this 4-person class, again, Seth Trimble, Jalen Washington, Tyler Nickel, and Wilcher, who projects to you to have the best college career? And I know part of that is looking at like who's around for a little bit, right? And so I know that's part of that mix. But of those 4, who would you say has the best college career?
Seth Trimble, because I expect him to be around for a little bit. I think Jalen could provide a spark and be like, ooh, all right, man, now we see. And then he could be like, he's out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like he's got the size and the ability. He's got an NBA, and you'll see. But I think he could be gone. That's why I say that. I mean, talent-wise, certainly if he's going to stay a long term, he'd be up there too. But Seth, I think, will be around. Seth is, like I said, for all intents and purposes, like to your point, he's a starter at any other school that he picks. But he wanted to come there and be part of something special, and I think he will be. And so, yeah, I think he'll stick around, and I think he'll be, a fan favorite. I think he's going to get all the high fives getting on the bus in March. for years to come.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Yes. All right, folks. Jason Jordan's you hear it. The Carolina backcourt is in good hands, probably for years to come. We'll be on the lookout for that. Jason, thank you so much for that look back at these young men and then the projection forward of what you see from them in the upcoming year. Appreciate you being with us, as always.
Indeed, man. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Big thanks as always to Jason Jordan for joining us. Coming up tomorrow, Pat Kilby and I look back at the exhibition game from last Friday, some lessons learned from it, and what that means for the upcoming regular season opener next Monday night. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow our guy Jason at JasonJordanSI, and you can follow me at Isaac Schade. Thanks for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and of course, our take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or anywhere else you get podcasts. Hey, if you haven't already, would love to have you subscribe to the show. Smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Leave some comments on your thoughts on this incoming freshman class. And don't forget to hit the bell so you get notifications every time a new episode drops. Really appreciate you hanging out with me on a Tuesday. It's the beginning of November. How is that a real thing? And I want to remind you that every single day is a great day to be a Tar Heel. Until tomorrow, peace.